Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Great Shot Kid, the Nerd Party's podcast about the people who make Star Wars. I'm Mike, and I know it's weird that I'm like introducing things, which is why I don't even know what to say. And it's not that John isn't here. John is here. He's just kind of not completely here.
I'm at the Obi-Wan Kenobi stage in, say, the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, as opposed to the fully realized apparition in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of sound. You know what you kind of sound like is the chatter between the X-wings at the end of
Red 6,
yeah.
Can you see Red 5? No sign of me. Red 5, where are you? Like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to make your trench run in a few minutes. But in the meantime, we figured we would talk about something else which is imploding, and that's the Han Solo movie.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, isn't it?
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
So as we are sure everyone knows, Han Solo movie went through a bit of a shakeup behind the scenes last week, and it's it's no longer being directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who were
Yes.
working on it for the past couple years at this point.
Yeah, through pre-production and through all of the different design phases and everything like that. They are no longer with the production, which was I know pretty shocking. I mean, in our own circle of friends in the nerd party itself, that there were the little shockwaves of, wait, what? I mean, there had been rumors that in Rogue One, Edwards had sort of been pushed to the back seat when they started doing the reshoots, and even I was kind of skeptical. I was like, no, they probably brought people in, but it's still. I think this serves as big, confirmation for the idea that maybe he just decided to play ball and just said, yep, okay, whatever you guys want to do, which is not a knock on him and does not take anything away from Rogue One if you liked it or anything like that. I'm just saying this is more of a confirmation of what people gleaned from that news, that maybe there's a little more control from Lucasfilm's production arm, when the directors come in.
Yeah, I mean, with the Rogue One situation, I really get the impression that, Edwards made the movie the way that he wanted to make it, and then the studio came in or whatever and said, okay, we really think that we should change some things. And Edwards said, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, I don't get the impression that Rogue One is not Edwards's director's cut, for example.
Right.
I'm sure there's probably little things where he's like, you want to do what now? But I think a lot of it was, someone came in, Tony Gilroy, or whoever came in with fresh eyes and said, hey, I think that it would be better if we did this. And Edwards was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, let's do it then. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
he had a lot of help. Maybe they would have said, we're doing it this way, whether you like it or not. But I get the impression that he is very satisfied with the finished product. You know what I mean?
Hey, what reason would he have not to be, right? If it was even faint praise, people had praise for Rogue One. A lot of people liked what happened there. And so I think that in the long run, any director, will wind up satisfied so far as that goes. But yeah, I would say that maybe the key difference with the story here is that I think that Edwards winds up being a bit like Marquand with Return of the Jedi, where he did deliver his cut and he handed it off, and back then in '83, Lucas watched it and Kazanjian watched it, and they said, okay, there are some things we want to do here. And back then, Marquand, according to the Making of Return of the Jedi book by Rinsler, said, okay, cool, I'm done. I did what I was going to do. You guys know what you want to do, so you fix it however you want to fix it. And again, that, I always love pointing out, Jedi's my favorite one of the original three. But what my curious side becomes, what is fundamentally different about the fact that Edwards comes in and is okay with this? Why were Miller and Lord unable to adapt to this? How did they not expect something like this? Not to be fired, but they had to have expected some sort of involvement from the studio on a pretty big level, considering what they were stepping into, right?
You would think so, yeah. But at the same time, maybe they thought, and I'm sure that they have dealt with this in the past, whether it's with the Lego Movie or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or whatever. I mean, surely there is studio involvement with big movies like that. I think maybe the difference is that, well, for one thing, they are more established than Edwards. They've had much bigger hits and everything, so maybe there is a bit of ego at play. But, perhaps there's also a thing where, you know, I mean, it sounds like, in this case, it's not, like Edwards, it sounds like, did his thing, did the thing that was agreed upon, and once the finished product was seen, they decided that it wasn't working, so they went back to the drawing board to quote unquote fix it. With this situation, it seems more like there is a plan which is laid out in the script, and basically on the day or in the course of production, Lord and Miller were like, we think it would be better if we changed the plan. And then that's when the studio and Kasdan were like, what happened to the plan? And they're like, yeah, we came up with something better. And, Kennedy and Kasdan are like, we disagree. And how about you stop doing that now? And, I can definitely see, Miller and Lord, as people who have made very successful movies in a very particular way, all of a sudden being told, no, you've got to do it our way. Them saying, we don't want to do it your way. We'd rather do something our way. Because at some point you do become like a director for hire.
Right.
And I don't think that that's what they ever wanted to be. It was always weird to me that they weren't writing this thing themselves because they've written everything else that they directed themselves. So it's bizarre to not have them write it. You know what I mean?
I do. I understand what you're saying. I mean that to an extent, I think I was happier with the announcement up to a certain point, but now that we're at the stage where we're getting sort of those leaks coming out, the first thing with me was, of course, everybody was immediately debating who's going to come in, who's going to come in, and Ron Howard's name was immediately floated, Joe Johnston's name was immediately floated, and somebody else, I forget who. I'm going to fail to attribute who it was, but somebody else actually said to me at one point, because I was debating like everybody else was, going back and forth, and they said, why wouldn't Gilroy come in? He did their thing on Rogue One. Why wouldn't he do it here too? And so I don't know what Gilroy is up to right now, but I mean, that is curious to me because they've got a known quantity, somebody who did come in and they said, this is what needs to be done. And he said, all right, I got this. And then he would get that directing credit with this one, presumably. And the thing is, with the DGA rules, I'm not even sure like how this works. Like this is very fascinating to me because don't they have to change a certain percentage of the film in order to give a credit to somebody other than Miller and Lord or to take them off completely? Because I think back to Superman 2 with Richard Lester, they'd shot a whole ton of Superman 2 with Donner, and they had to change certain things so that more Lester stuff got put in there than Donner stuff.
Yeah, that's what I had always heard. But it sounds like maybe either something has changed, or maybe that was a misinterpretation of the rules by history. Because everything that I've read in sort of a official or sort of rule based capacity in terms of this, like from people who would know, seems to suggest that basically well, this is what I've heard, and I could be getting this a little bit wrong, but this is what I read in one of these articles. It's up to the studio to decide once the studio decides, if someone who worked on the movie, so namely Lord and Miller, uh, disagree with the studio's decision, then they have the right to appeal. And once the appeal is made, then it is the decision of the DGA, in terms of like who gets the credit. And once the DGA makes that decision, then that is the final say on the matter. And there's also some other like little thing in there where if the DGA fails to make a decision, then the studio gets to decide. And I could be getting that wrong, but basically what it comes down to is it's up to the DGA. Like they'll basically hear, both sides. There will be like an appeals process, and whatever they determine is correct, whoever they feel does deserve to get the credit will get it. But the DGA is pretty hardcore about there only being one director or one team of directors. So it's unlikely that it will say like directed by, Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and Ron Howard, which is what you would see from the Writers Guild.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one or the other. And I don't think anyone really will know until the end.
Okay, so speaking of the Writers Guild, if Lord and Miller did all of this stuff where now they've got the leaks coming out, quote unquote, so-called leaks, saying that they were riffing too much on the script and not sticking to the plan. If they came up with something really good and they wind up keeping it, something that's a really good laugh or a really good, you know they reimagine something, because because directors do that sometimes. They come up with something on set. Is it possible that Lord and Miller get a writing credit on this? Or is this something where Lord and Miller would be insane to challenge anything that Disney and Lucasfilm credit it with? That they should just take their paycheck and be like, look, this just didn't work, and they bow out.
I don't think they'd be insane to do that. I mean, I think that maybe they'll look at the finished product and be like, we don't want our names on that. But then again, the other thing is that there is the whole sort of monetary element to it, with residuals and all that stuff. So who knows? Even if they don't like the finished product, they might want their names on it just so that they can get paid. But as far as like the writing thing is concerned, I highly doubt that they will get writing credit based on what we know, because that sort of thing, I mean, for one thing, there needs to be a rather substantial contribution to the script in order for someone to get a writing credit. And I mean, based on how many people don't get credit for things that, where they like do like completely new drafts. Like, for example, Christopher McQuarrie did a draft of Rogue One, and so did Scott Z. Burns, I believe. And neither of them got credit on the movie because it wasn't their contribution, whatever it was not substantial enough to warrant credit. And the other thing about that, and I think that this is a throwback to sort of like the studio era days, but there is a lot of like sort of like provisional stuff in the contracts and the whatever, and I think just the guild rules that basically are designed to protect the credited writers, the actual people who are hired to write the thing. And because of that, like, unless a director or a producer has like a very, very substantial contribution to the script, they're not credited, because basically they don't want, let's say a producer who's just, he's the guy in charge. He wants to get, whatever. I mean, kind of like a Gene Roddenberry thing with the Star Trek theme, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They want to prevent things like that from happening. So as I understand it, and I could be completely wrong, or the rules could have completely changed or whatever, but as I understand it, people like directors and producers are held to a much higher standard when it comes to sort of arbitrating credit for screenplays. So I really, really, really don't think that Lord and Miller are going to get script credit on this, because at no point has anyone said like the script is by the two of them. Even
Right.
if there was a lot of improv or whatever, I don't think that that's going to happen. I would imagine, and I mean, who knows, because a lot of it is going to depend on how much is reshot, how much of it ends up being Ron Howard's movie and all that stuff. But I would imagine that if Ron Howard gets directing credit, then Lord and Miller will be listed as like executive producers, something along
Okay.
those lines, or the other way around. If they get credit, Ron Howard, I'm guessing, will be an executive producer. You know,
So here's a question. So that with the directing credit, why why didn't Disney Lucasfilm go with one of the Kasdans to direct this? Since they both have directing history and they wrote the script, you know that they're not going to vary from what's supposed to be delivered, right?
yeah, that is, and that's something which has been discussed a lot in this. Apparently, there is a Directors Guild rule which says that someone who is already working on the movie cannot come in as a replacement director except in an emergency situation.
Right, but I'm saying why weren't they tapped from the beginning?
Oh,
Was this Lucasfilm just wanting the hot hand?
I mean, that's an interesting question, and I don't, I mean, because part of me would think like, yeah, Lawrence Kasdan, why wouldn't you get him to direct? I mean, he hasn't made a movie in a while, and I'm wondering if maybe he just didn't want to. But I do know, and I read this somewhere else. I think Kiri Hart was talking about this at one point, and they brought it up again with this whole thing, like. Lawrence Kasdan was a very big proponent of Lord and Miller early
Really?
on. Like he apparently was very vocal in his support for them, and really, really thought that they were the right people for the job.
Hmm.
So obviously, things change, but whatever. That's
But that's so. I mean, that's so wild. That's kind of mind blowing because I mean, how could you? I mean, everybody knew what they were known for. I mean,
yeah.
everybody knew that's how they made movies, and that's the type of movie that they made. So
I
how could
guess
you? I mean, did you just think that they were going to come in and say, "Oh well, we'll take your script, but we know how to make it so that it's a little bit zanier the way they deliver the lines"? Is that you think that's what they were thinking they were going to get?
I think because like you look at their work and you're like, what is like the movie? What is it that they've done which suggests that they'd be good at a Star Wars movie? And it's not their live action stuff.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, to me it is. To me, it's 22 Jump Street, and the fact that that movie is absolutely amazing on every single level. But it's the Lego movie,
Yeah.
and it's like something where you're like adapting an existing property, which is really freaking hard to adapt, and you're coming up with it in a way which is very, very accessible and has a lot deeper meaning than even what you would consider the original to have. Has massive box office appeal across the board. It's a kids movie which adults enjoy. I mean, all that stuff, with the pop culture references, it's clear that they're products of, the 80s and Star Wars, era, childhoods and stuff like that. I mean, that to me really suggests, like, yes. And, okay, it's animated, but they've directed 2 live action movies as well. So, like, that to me is sort of like the thing. And the thing about it is it being animated, you would think that would have to be very well planned out. I mean, you look at like working with visual effects in a Star
Mm,
Wars movie or whatever, it's like a lot of the stuff has to be planned out way in advance so that you can
right.
get, the plates and whatever. And there's not much that you can change once it's sort of like locked in a certain way. The same thing I would imagine is true for animation, right? I mean, you've got to have it all planned out years in advance so that it can be animated.
Right.
So, I mean, on paper, to me, it looks like that's perfect. But I guess, once they were on the set, they drifted a little more towards the 21 Jump Street, thing. And I don't know.
Well, now there are two reports. Now the thing is the leaks are coming out like a political campaign here, where
Yeah.
now we've got a story where when it was announced that they were being replaced, the crew applauded on set or something like that. And now there's one which I consider that it's complete clickbait, that Lucasfilm is dissatisfied with Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo,
Well, that is clickbait because that story comes from the first story that you just mentioned. Because they say in there like, oh, they hired an acting coach, and even in that article, they're like, that's not weird, but it happened later on in the process, which is a little weird. And then someone else, some other website, took that and ran with it and said they're unhappy with you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is definitely clickbait, I think.
Yeah. Well,
You
I mean,
know?
and the thing is with hiring the acting coach, I remember when everybody got all up in arms because with for Revenge of the Sith, Lucas brought on it was called a dialect coach
Hmm.
for for Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman, and it's like it's because these are very specific skill sets that these teachers or coaches have. It's like you don't expect Norv Turner to run out on the field, but he can tell the quarterback, it looks like it might be better over here if you do it this way. And it's like that's perfectly fine. That's not a big that I don't consider that too big a deal, especially when you're talking about something where you've got somebody coming in playing the earlier iteration of one of the most beloved characters in the last 40 years of cinema.
Right.
You want somebody on set to be like, rethink this one. Like
Yeah,
let's
and
let's
not
do this a little differently.
and not even like, oh, I don't think that you're getting to the core of the character or
Right.
anything like that, but just saying like, okay, I can, I mean and it is very common. I mean, I saw some interview with like Julia Roberts or something where she was talking about working on something with her acting coach. I mean, I think most actors, most A-list actors have their own personal coaches. I mean, I see it as something similar to, I mean, like you're saying, it's sports analogy. Like there are pitching coaches
Right.
and there are people who see things. I mean, the White Sox have Don Cooper, and Don Cooper is known. I mean, happens all the frickin' time. The White Sox play a team. There's some relief pitcher who gets absolutely rocked by the Sox, and then a week later, the Sox trade for the player. And then all of a sudden, he's really, really good. And the reason for that is because the Sox pitching coach is watching this guy and saying, oh, I see exactly what he's doing wrong. If I just told him this, he'd be good. I mean,
Right.
that's what I think it is. And you look at basically any movie, any credits for any movie, especially like you're saying with dialect coaches, they're all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
So I don't really see that as being a thing.
Well, yeah, no, I don't either, but I would say, okay, it came on late in the process. Maybe it came on late in the process because it was a first attempt to, maybe Alden Ehrenreich was getting direction from Lord and Miller, and Lucasfilm wasn't initially ready to give the blame just to Lord and Miller for why Ehrenreich's performance wasn't, what they wanted. And so they're like, you know what, let's bring in a dialect coach or an acting coach and work with him. And then they find out later in the process, no, it's he was getting direction that we didn't like. It wasn't that
Yeah.
he wasn't getting it.
I mean, I saw another thing from a like a fan site. This is an unsubstantiated rumor for sure, but
Always the best.
that Aaron Reich is the one who voiced concerns to Lucasfilm about Lord and Miller's direction, and someone there said that Aaron Reich's performance was something similar to Ace Ventura, which to me does not make any sense at all by any,
That would not make it to this
you know,
stage. There's no
yeah.
way that makes it this far along in the process. I mean,
Right,
and
right. So, I mean, who knows if that's true or not or anything, but I do want to say I had a dream.
oh no.
I had a dream that I watched the Lord and Miller cut of Han Solo, and it played a lot like a Noah Baumbach movie, which I usually like a lot. But I remember watching this in my dream and thinking, this is intolerably bad. Like, I was really upset that Lord and Miller were fired, but if this is what we were going to get, I'm kind of glad that they've been kicked off the project.
As I have said many times before, your dreams make me want to take your lunch money away from you. I can't, my own anecdote that I'll throw out there is that, for days we were all talking about this. And by all, I mean, everybody listening to this, you and me, our friends, we're all talking about, oh my gosh, the Han Solo movie's in tumult. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, what does this mean? No lie, during this, I had a coworker send me an email to myself and another person who he knows are Star Wars fans saying, "Oh wow, I just saw a headline. I didn't know they were working on another Star Wars movie and that it was about Han Solo." And so my initial reaction is, "What planet have you been living on?" And then the answer that came to me was planet Earth, where people aren't consumed by the entertainment news that we are. And so
No, I mean
this whole controversy means nothing to him.
it's totally true. I mean, I have a similar story. I was in a movie theater the other day, and they had the poster up for Last Jedi, and there was a kid who was probably around like 10 years old, and he was with like his, I don't know, another friend of his or something, or it looked like maybe like an older cousin or something, who knows. And he's like, "Oh man, I can't wait till that comes out. Do you want to go see Star Wars 2 with me?"
Huh.
And
Oh.
then and then he says, technically, this is the third one, but Rogue One is a prequel.
I kind of love that story so much.
It's great,
Yeah.
right? But it
Keeps
really
in
does kind of
perspective.
show,
Yeah.
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 So there you go. And that's someone who's looking forward to it,
Yeah. Luke, you know what? I think that the moral is Lucasfilm's going to be a-okay. They're gonna come through this just fine.
Yeah, I have a feeling people are still going to go see this movie.
It's probable.
And, I mean, we should talk. I mean, I want to do, well, I want to do two things, maybe together, maybe separately, but I definitely want to do a thorough study of Ron Howard, and certainly look at some of his better movies. And I also want to look at the very least 22 Jump Street, although I think maybe we should just do 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street together, just
Okay.
to see like what it is we could have gotten or maybe are getting or whatever, and but in the meantime, perhaps we should just sort of run down the highlights of Ron Howard's filmography, just for, I mean, people who may not be familiar with his work. I mean, this guy has won an Oscar for directing A Beautiful Mind, which also won Best Picture. But in addition to that, he's made a number of very good movies,
Yes.
Including
Nice dig.
The Truth Hurts,
Oh yeah, no, he didn't deserve to win it for A Beautiful Mind, not at all. That was an apology Oscar, so far as I was concerned.
Yeah, that movie's garbage.
I wouldn't call it garbage, but yeah,
It's
I mean,
it's pretty terrible.
I hold it up against something like Cinderella Man or Apollo 13, and I'm like, no, that's not. That's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his early stuff I'm really not that familiar with, because he's made like 30 movies or close to it. But, like Grand Theft Auto, we'll definitely need to take a look at that and put that into our spin-off trilogy director or whatever thing.
Have you ever seen Splash?
I have seen Splash. I like
Okay. Because
That was a good
that's very relevant because that's comedy. I mean, he hasn't done comedy in a long time,
Yeah.
but that's comedy. And I mean, he was Richie Cunningham, and he was, Opie Taylor, and he was like, so he has comedic sensibilities that he came out of. So, I think Splash is definitely worth taking a look at.
Yeah. They're remaking Splash, but they're gender swapping it. So the merman is going to be Channing Tatum.
I mean, I think that's great, but like I think it's borderline. I don't know what the dramatic word would be, but sacrilegious, blasphemous, whatever you want to, whatever big word you want to give to it, that's inappropriate. But remaking any movie that John Candy is in is just wrong in my book, because that guy you're never going to capture him again, and I just don't think that's right.
Okay, yeah, it's just Splash. I mean, come on.
Oh no, I'm not saying this is the greatest work of ever, but it's like when John Candy was involved in a project, it's it would be like remaking Vacation. That would just be crazy. Oh wait, they did, and it didn't go well.
No,
I mean,
no, it wasn't a remake. It was a sequel.
oh, was it a sequel?
Yeah, the
Oh,
dad,
okay.
the kid from the first
Oh,
movie is the
he
dad in
was
this
Rusty.
one.
That's right. I never bothered watching it because
And I
yeah.
was like, well, because I've never seen any of those movies, so I was like, well, that's lame because like they recast him. Why didn't they just get the original? And someone explained to me, no, 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 you don't get it. It works. That's part of the joke because the kids are always recast. And
Yes.
I'm like, oh, well, I like that a lot. Then I'm glad they recast it. Now that makes me want to see the movie.
No,
But
I thought that yeah, okay, I had it locked in my brain that that was a remake. You're right. That's
well,
not.
they
So
certainly
okay.
were promoting it as a remake. I mean, it's the Force Awakens of the Vacation franchise for sure. You know.
Yeah.
But Howard also did Cocoon,
Hmm.
Willow for Lucasfilm,
Yep.
Parenthood, Backdraft, Far and Away, 70 millimeter.
I did not like Far and Away at all. I saw
No,
it in the movie theater, and I remember walking out. I had there were there were three friends total. Two of the friends walked out, and they loved it. They thought it was great, and I walked out with my pal Mike, and we're walking out of the theater, and we're both silent because we didn't want to rain on the parade of the two people who really enjoyed it. And Mike just looks at me with a sidelong glance, and he goes, that was far and away the worst movie I've seen in a while. And I just started laughing and laughing and laughing. And then we ruined everybody's day because we told them we didn't like it. So
it happens. It
I know.
happens. I saw that in part of my, when I was in high school, I was like, oh, Nicole Kidman, I need to watch every single movie that she's in. So I saw that as part of that retrospective, and it's not a good movie.
No.
But the paper, Apollo 13, probably is best in my opinion that I've seen anyway.
And I think the paper is overlooked. I saw the paper actually at a press screening, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, but the thing is, I love Michael Keaton, and so I think that I think that actually the paper might be a good indicator of the type of pacing that Howard could bring to a comedic movie because that's a very fast-paced, frenetic, multiple plot line type of movie, and I think that indicates something good too.
Yeah, I mean that could be. I mean, the next one, that they did after Apollo 13 is, I think, his most underrated movie that I've seen, and that's Ransom.
Oh,
I
Ransom's awesome.
I love Ransom so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, Ed TV. Yeah, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I didn't see. Beautiful Mind. Whatever. Missing is not a good movie. Cinderella Man though, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Cinderella Man's amazing.
That and Frost Nixon is amazing.
Oh, I forgot he did Frost Nixon. Frost Nixon's wonderful. The performances he gets from everybody and the way that it plays was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the thing I love about the dilemma is at the end he puts a guy named Gene Honda in the movie, and he's the voice of Guaranteed Rate Field, where the White Sox play, and you actually get to see him on screen, and you get to hear his amazing voice. So there's that. But he also did Rush, which was okay, and the Da Vinci Code movies, which were
Ugh.
whatever.
But see
And
the thing is the Da Vinci Code movie was based on a bad book. So the movie was exactly what I expected it to be. I mean, why did I go see it if I didn't like the book? Because I wanted to see. Because sometimes you do something amazing with weaker source material. I've never read Jaws, but I've been told that the movie is just vastly superior to the original. The original inspiration, and same with Die Hard. But yeah, the Da Vinci Code was very bland.
yeah, Angels and Demons was better, but it still wasn't that great. But
Yeah,
Inferno is just a terrible, terrible mess. But yeah, such is life.
yeah, yeah.
So Ron Howard, yep, he's here. He's legacy. I mean, he's been there from the beginning. Working with Lucas before Lucas made any Star Wars anything. So and he's someone who obviously Kennedy can trust to deliver. She knows exactly what she's going to get. Maybe it seems like a boring choice, but in this particular instance, it seems like a perfect choice almost.
Yeah. They need to
So
add cold water to the hot to get the right bath temperature.
exactly. So be interesting to see what happens. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. So yeah, Ron Howard is here, and you know who else is here is us. We are here. We are Great Shot Kid. You can find us here on the Nerd Party Network, and the Nerd Party Network you can reach online at Join Nerd Party on Twitter, Facebook.com/The Nerd Party. You can find us on Instagram. You can go to thenerdparty.com/contact and drop a note to me and Mike. Look up for Great Shot Kid. We love to hear from people. And speaking of loving to hear from people, we would very much appreciate it if you went on over to iTunes and just let people know what you think of the show. If you like us, that's great, because when you give us a rating and review in iTunes, it lets other people know that we exist and they can come on over and join the fun. Mike, that's where they can reach us officially. Where can they reach you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me on TalkFilmSociety.com doing Soderbergh 2828, and you can find me on CommentaryTrackStars.com doing Commentary Track Stars, and you can find me on Trek.fm doing Stage 9 with you.
That's right. I do Stage 9 with you over on Trek FM, which is basically... it's like Great Shot Kid, only for Star Trek creators. And you can also find me back here on the Nerd Party Network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. You can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig, where we get into a little bit of zaniness every week. And, if you're looking for me online, the username where you can find me pretty much everywhere is Kessel Junkie. So with all that said, thank you for joining us for this episode of Great Shot Kid, and join us next week for a special guest right here on Great Shot Kid.